I've never really done a game review before. I've always loved horror, and I've always loved listening to other people's takes on games like this. But for the first time, I felt like I had to do one myself. Silent Hill 2. It got under my skin in a way that made me think hard about myself. And I don't think that's an accident. In fact, I think that's exactly what the creators wanted. When James Sutherland steps into Silent Hill, he isn't just chasing a mystery. He's confronting parts of himself he's tried to ignore. Guilt, grief, regret, and that's what makes this game more than just a horror story. It's a mirror. In this video, I want to walk through the story, the characters, the monsters, and how it all made me reflect on myself. Not just as a fan of horror, but as someone who finally understands why Silent Hill 2 has been haunting people for decades. So let's dive in. Before we dive into my take on Silent Hill 2, it's worth saying up front that this is a game with many interpretations. People see different meanings in the story and its characters. But first, let's get the basics out of the way so we're all on the same page. You play as James Sunderland. He receives a letter from his wife, Mary, a letter written after her death. It calls him to Silent Hill, a fog-covered town that feels more like a reflection of the mind than a real place. Confused, desperate, and haunted by his grief, James makes the journey, not fully knowing what he's looking for or what he'll find. As he explores the town, James encounters other people who, like him, are drawn to Silent Hill by their own pain. Maria, a mysterious woman who looks just like Mary, Angela, a woman trapped in her own trauma, and Eddie, a man struggling with guilt and shame. Each encounter slowly unravels not only the mystery of the town, but the truths James has been avoiding in his own life. Silent Hill itself is more than just a setting. It's a mirror of James's psyche. The fog, the abandoned buildings, and the creatures that lurk in the shadows aren't just obstacles. They're manifestations of guilt, repression, and regret. The town forces James and the player to confront the darkest parts of the human experience. Let's talk about the people James meets in Silent Hill, because they're more than just characters. Each one is a reflection of pain, guilt, and the way we deal with trauma. James Sunderland is the lens through which we experience the town, and he's haunted by more than just Mary's death. His journey is about guilt, denial, and repression. The monsters and the fog aren't just threats, they're mirrors of his own psyche. Every choice, every confrontation forces James and the player to wrestle with uncomfortable truths about himself. Maria is confusing, seductive, and at times infuriating. She looks like Mary, but she isn't Mary. She represents James's desire to cling to an ideal, to rewrite reality, to avoid the pain of loss. Yet she's flawed, and the world of Silent Hill constantly reminds James that fantasy can't erase guilt. Angela's story is the rawest and most tragic in my opinion. She's trapped by trauma and abuse, and Silent Hill externalizes her inner torment. Her presence shows that the town doesn't just punish James, it amplifies the pain everyone brings with them. She's a mirror of fear, shame, and helplessness. Eddie is a stark example of guilt manifesting as anger and paranoia. His story is about self-punishment through isolation and lashing out. Silent Hill reflects that twisted path, turning his inner turmoil into monstrous consequences. Laura is different from the others. She's a child who seems almost unaffected by the town's horrors, representing innocence and the unburdened perspective of someone who hasn't been shaped by grief or guilt. She's a reminder that the weight of trauma is personal, and not everyone experiences the town in the same way. Yet, even her presence highlights James's obsession with the past. She's a living contrast to his self-punishment. The brilliance of Silent Hill 2 is that these characters aren't just obstacles or allies, they're symbolic. The town adapts to James's mind, but each person we meet reminds us that pain is universal, and no one escapes their inner demons untouched. Each of the characters in Silent Hill 2 is deep and complex on their own. Yet it feels almost too coincidental that they all struggle with issues so similar to James's own guilt, grief, and regrets. This leaves you wondering, are they manifestations of James's mind? Or does this town itself somehow draw people whose inner turmoil mirrors his? The game never gives a definitive answer, and that ambiguity is what allows for so many interpretations. I love when a game, movie, or piece of media is intentionally left open-ended, because it makes the experience feel personal, like the story is speaking directly to you. In Silent Hill 2, the monsters aren't just there to scare you. They exist to reflect the guilt, fear, and inner turmoil of James and the people around him. Every encounter has meaning, and understanding that is what makes the game truly haunting. The first creatures you encounter are grotesque, deformed, and often vaguely human. These basic monsters, from the wandering, emaciated figures to the more aggressive humanoid shapes, are manifestations of fear, shame, and repressed memory. They're not just obstacles, they're physical reminders of the inner horrors James is trying to avoid. Each one has a sense of purpose, making the environment feel alive with psychological tension. Then there are the nurses, one of the game's most disturbing, recurring enemies. Their jerky, unnatural movements and sexualized appearances represent James's conflicted feelings about desire, intimacy, and his memories of Mary. They are deeply unsettling because they combine human familiarity with twisted distortion, amplifying the sense of repression and unease that permeates Silent Hill. And of course, Pyramid Head. The most iconic and terrifying of the creatures. He's not just an enemy. He's James's guilt and need for punishment incarnate. Relentless and imposing, Pyramid Head forces James to face the consequences of his actions. He embodies the inescapable weight of conscience and the personal torment at the heart of the game's story. The bosses in Silent Hill 2 take the ideas even further. Each one is tied to a character's psyche or to James's own inner struggles. The abstract and grotesque designs make them more than just challenges. They're climactic moments where the psychological horror becomes physical. Facing a boss isn't just a test of combat skills. It's a confrontation with the emotions and traumas that the game has been building throughout the journey. And beyond the individual enemies, Silent Hill itself is a reflection of James's mind. The fog, the oppressive silence, and the shifting corridors all work together with the monsters to create a living, breathing, psychological setting. It's not just about surviving, it's about confronting the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. This is what I love about this game. What makes Silent Hill 2's monsters truly remarkable is that they aren't just random enemies. They're carefully crafted extensions of James's mind. Each one reflects his guilt, fear, and inner struggles, turning every encounter into something deeply personal. The creators didn't just make monsters to fight. They made monsters that belonged to James, making the horror feel intimate, meaningful, and unforgettable. Before we get into the actual gameplay, I want to be upfront. I never actually played the original in depth. I tried the PS2 version a long time ago, but I never got very far. Honestly, I think part of it was that I was young, and the clunky controls of older games just made it more intimidating for me. I remember encountering the first monster and almost immediately stopping. It was just too scary, and the controls made it even scarier. That's why this remake by Bloober Team was such a different experience for me. I had played some of their other games, like Layers of Fear and the more recent Chronos: The New Dawn, and I could see how their style and attention to psychological horror translated beautifully here. The controls feel modern and responsive, making exploration and combat much more fluid. You're still tense, still on the edge, but the game doesn't fight against you the way older survival horror titles often did. The camera angles, visuals, and updated animations make the town feel alive and oppressive in a way that draws you in without relying on frustration or awkward movement. One of the things I really enjoyed was the puzzles. They never felt unnecessarily difficult, but they added a satisfying sense of progression and discovery. Coupled with the freedom to explore every nook and cranny of the town, I felt fully immersed. Every room, every alleyway, and every hidden detail added to the story and atmosphere. Speaking of atmosphere, from the fog rolling through the streets to the dimly lit corridors and haunting sound design, every element reinforces the psychological tension. Even subtle details, like the creaking of floorboards or distant echoes, make you second-guess every step. It's clear the developers focused on immersing players fully in James's mind, keeping the horror personal and emotional, rather than just jump scares. Overall, the remake made me appreciate Silent Hill 2 for the first time. It removed the barriers that kept me away from the original while preserving and even enhancing the tension, dread, and intimacy of the story. Bloober Team did an incredible job, in my opinion, honoring the original while bringing their own expertise and psychological horror to the table. I'm very excited that they are currently working on the original Silent Hill remake. I will definitely be playing that when it comes out. Playing Silent Hill 2 was more than just a horror game. It was a lens into the mind. It made me reflect on my own regrets, fears, and even the parts of myself I try to avoid. It made me think about what my own Silent Hill would look like, the memories, fears, and guilt I carry. It made me want to be a better person and to confront the things that I would never want people to know about myself, in a way to remove it entirely from my life. What I love is the ambiguity. Are the characters real or projections of James's mind? Does the town attract people who struggle echoes his own? The game never answers this, leaving it open to interpretation, which makes it personal. This is horror that doesn't just live in a town, it lives inside you. As a lifelong fan of horror, I've grown to appreciate stories that leave you thinking. Not just shocking or gory moments, but stories that make you wonder why these horrors are happening to people, and what that says about them. There has to be a reason for something to take place in front of me, and if there isn't, I'm quick to dismiss it as a cheap thrill. Silent Hill 2 does that and more brilliantly. In the end, I think Silent Hill 2 is, in my opinion, one of the best games of all time. The story, the characters, the monsters, and the atmosphere all come together to create an experience that is both terrifying and deeply personal. Bloober Team's remake is practically perfect. It modernizes the controls and visuals while preserving the psychological horror that makes the game so unforgettable. For me, it deserves a solid 9 out of 10. I love returning to the streets of Silent Hill with James, exploring every foggy corner, uncovering every secret, and experiencing the story all over again. It's a game that sticks with you long after you've put down the controller, and it's a masterclass in horror, storytelling, and emotional depth. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there this Halloween, and remember, sometimes the scariest places aren't in a town, but in your own mind.